All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you may be. So, if you're watching this, as the title says, this is about Avengers Endgame, and this contains the basic plot and story. So, that being said, if you have not, if you plan on seeing this movie and you haven't yet, stop this video. I'm warning you. I mean, again, I know some people, including me at times, have been like, oh, well, spoilers aren't going to really ruin it for me or whatnot. But I'm saying this as someone who just came from seeing it and everything, that a lot of these things, I mean, some of them could pretty much be figured out. But, you know, it's always great and amazing to see things with fresh eyes, no preconceived notion. Now, if you are watching this, and again, my viewership is low, so who knows who will actually watch this. Uh, and you know, and you'll probably already have it spoiled by 50 million forms of media. But I'm giving you an out for those who have subscribed to me, and thank you very much to each and every one of you. Okay, so let's get into Endgame, and this is like I said, I just came home from the movies. Um, this is going to be just kind of some basic major high points, my thoughts on it, on what I thought was good, which was almost all the film. Things, a few things that I thought were like, really, but overall, I mean, it's a wonderful, amazing movie that, is a well-deserved ending, if you will, to the Infinity Saga arc, however you want to put it, of the past 10 plus years. So, bear with me. All right. So, first we start off the film, basically right before the snap, where we see, and this shot is in the trailers. You see Hawkeye is, you know, having fun with his family, as you see the shot from the trailer with the girl who's with the bow in her hand. And I know some people were wondering if it was going to be Kate Bishop, or who's supposed to be the subject of the Hawkeye TV series, or which was announced, or his daughter, as he has a family, as introduced in Age of Ultron. And it is that shot that starts with, and you see his family. They're having a picnic. He's got his ankle monitor on since he's on house arrest, as Black Widow mentioned in. Excuse me, sorry. In Infinity War. Um, and he turns his head for a second, and they're gone because the snap has obviously happened. Um, cut to 5 years later. We see obviously one of the first signs of just the disarray. Well, let me go right back. Before that, but after we see Hawkeye's family has disappeared, uh, we cut to Tony and Nebula, like right after the snap has happened, obviously. Um, and, you know, it's been, again, shot from the trailer, which I will say, it was rumored that, or the Russos had said pretty much that, and like I believe Kevin Feige had said that, what you see in the trailers is pretty much like from the first 15 minutes of the movie. And as I think about it, probably like I said, 90 something percent of what we saw in the trailers. I don't know about the TV spots because I avoided those, but like 90% of what you saw in the trailer was literally probably like within the first 30 minutes of this movie. So, um, anyways, uh, so we see that scene from the first trailer when Kevin Tony is recording the message to Pepper, about air oxygen is going to run out tomorrow, and wish he could pull off one more surprise. And then we see he basically lays down for the night to pass out. Nebula puts him in the captain's seat, I guess, to be his final resting place, and then you see a glow, and it's Captain Marvel. She brings him back to Earth. The reuniting with Pepper and the Avengers, and just he's just like totally lost it. I mean, as far as just like this is what happened, blah 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 blah. And I mean, again, if you saw Infinity War, those he was like lost the kid for Spider-Man, and Captain America's of course like we've lost so many, and he has a meltdown. Tony has a meltdown basically. Um, then we have a jump 5 years later, and we see um, Ant-Man's van impounded. And again, because it's been sitting there since the snap, the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp, and a rat uh, walking across controllers. Scott is freed from the quantum realm. He comes by the Avengers compound, and lets them know what's going up. And we see, of course, in the 5 years that's happened, you know, we see Cap is in the support group, which is in the trailers. Um, and then you see, Natasha Black Widow, obviously, where her red hair is growing back in. You see the blonde edges. I'm thinking she's in the 5 years she just let it grow out and never trimmed that, or just kept blonde edges, I guess. So But anyways, um, and just seeing their interactions, just how despondent they feel after all these things that have happened. We see, of course, after Ant-Man is Scott is released from the quantum realm, he goes home and sees Cassie, who's of course 5 years older, so a teenager. And you know uh he pops up by the Avengers compound. They try to figure things out, go see Tony. Tony has a daughter, Morgan, as he was talking with Pepper about at the beginning of Infinity War. They have that nice little farm homestead, to take Clint's example. Of course, Clint, losing his family, has gone up the deep end, become Ronin, which you see in the trailers, obviously. And just basically trying to get the band together. Thor's got a beer gut. He's basically him, Korg, and Meek, who, again, people wondered what happened to them and Valkyrie and the other Asgardians at the beginning in Infinity War, as again, Thanos killed half of them, and obviously half of them survived, got away. You see New Asgard on Earth, where they're all living, but Thor is, well, again, I skipped a moment. Basically, we see that again, right afterwards, they you know see that Thanos is after Tony and Nebula have been rescued by Captain Marvel. They see that Thanos has used the gauntlet again, which he uses it to get rid of the Infinity Stones. They go to him to try to figure out a way to get to solve it all, and he's destroyed the stones. So Thor kills him. I mean, first he lops the arm off, you know, which I'm sure many people thought in the first movie he should have done to begin with. And then he goes for the head. As Thanos says, you should have gone for the head. And, so they're in despair, they're despondent. Then we have the 5 year jump. Um, and oh, just so many things. But in a nutshell, Thor's got a beer belly. He's despondent. Chilling with Meek and Quark, playing games and whatnot. And we see within again the first 30 minutes or so, the whole thing is basically trying to get the band back together. Tony figures out the problem of time travel, um, and they decide we're going to do this. We've got to get the stones back. How we can reverse this. And what follows over the next few hours is just really wonderful. As when the movie was filming, of course there were some set photo leaks of like them, like Captain America in his Battle for New York, the Avengers costume. So I mean, you kind of figured time travel would have to be involved in this somehow to reverse this. I mean, if they couldn't just snap it all back together, which would be really convenient. I mean, really quick, they had time travel had to be involved somehow when, of course, the quantum realm and everything. So, um, we end up with just some great things. We see them, well, they split into different teams. We see Captain America, Iron Man, and Ant-Man go back to the Battle of New York to try to retrieve the Tesseract. So, and, one thing I would say, what's great about this movie is it's kind of like, and of course they mentioned Back to the Future and here and loads of time travel movies, which is so much fun. How still having in the despondency of all this happened, still so many comic moments in this. Um, and a la Back to the Future, we see alternate angles or the continuation of what was going on between things in i- in other movies, mainly like I said in the first Avengers, we see what happens again from the that moment at the end, right before the end of the first Avengers movie when Loki's defeated. He's like, I'll take that drink now," and they're all standing above him in the hero poses and whatnot, and they even make a crack about that. Well, now that we're done with our superhero poses or whatever, something like that, and we go from there. Them turning Loki over to Shield, pre-Hydra Shield. So this movie again, I love. We got to see so many familiar faces in this movie. It's so freaking awesome. We see uh, Agent Sitwell. We see Rumlow, who's Crossbones. We see, I just wish we had seen Coulson. I mean, again, Coulson's dead at this point. I get that. you know. But it would have just, I mean, as we saw him younger in Captain Marvel, it would have been really cool if somehow we could have, had Coulson in again. But obviously he's dead, so, or to their knowledge, because the whole Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to MCU thing's still never quite been explained. Anyways, um, so yeah, we see Agent Sitwell, we see Crossbones, and in their attempts to get the Tesseract back from them, kind of having to Captain America fighting himself, having the whole this whole thing, of having to insert themselves into this situation, but trying not to alter things too much. And I forgot, and we see, and I forgot the Hulk is there at the same time, and he goes to the Sanctum Sanctorum on Bleecker Street and looking for Doctor Strange. But of course, this is before Doctor Strange, and we see the Ancient One at that sanctum, and of course, she's aware of many things like this as far as the timeline and whatnot. So we see an interaction between her and the professor, as I'll call him. Again, I know I'm so like random right now. It's just there's so many things. Again, I just came home from seeing the movie, so excuse me. So, as someone who grew up reading the comics and everything, there are many moments, and this movie is like, the MCU in general has had many comic moments, many comic-y moments, shots of many comic panels. This movie is a true comic come to life in so many ways. So, one of the things from the comic, we've had various versions of the Hulk. There's, the Gray Hulk, of course, Savage Hulk, and there's, many shades of the Green Savage Hulk. And there was what was known as the Professor, which was basically Bruce and the Hulk, a perfect meshing of them with an intelligent Hulk, basically. And we got a version of that. Again, when we see the 5 year jump, um, when we first re-meet the Hulk after 5 years, or Bruce, it is this like professor type where he said he found a way to blend them together, the best of both worlds. So we see that Hulk interact with the Ancient One, and of course, when he goes to try to take the Time Stone from her, she does the shove as she did to Stephen Strange for the astral form, and of course, it's Bruce's astral form coming out of the Hulk's body professor's body and then reuniting is a great little nod. But that whole scene re in the Avengers was cool. And of course, they lose the Tesseract. So, well, Loki ends up, they Loki ends up getting his hands on it and escaping. So how that changed the timeline, who knows? We have a and there's a Loki series coming. So I wonder if maybe that will explore some differences that may have happened during that. Because again, that's one thing. Since that had changed, it I guess he escaped, but then things still had to correct themselves. Or no, see this again. It's the weird fun thing with timelines because when you're talking time travel is okay because that's one group, and Loki escapes with the Tesseract. So Steve and Tony, to solve it, have to go. And Ant Man got the spear, so he jump back to the present with that. And Steve and Tony had to figure out how they could get the Tesseract, and they're running out of Pym particles, which was one of the devices for, of course, the time travel, quantum travel. And they figured to go back to the 70s. And with that, we see, of course, they go to the facility where Captain America was trained and born. And, of course, mentions Armin Zola. We see young Howard Stark. And, they used, of course, John Slattery from in the movies, well, from Iron Man, Howard Stark, but younger, instead of Dominic, uh, crap, I forget what his name is, the one who played Howard Stark in Captain America, the first Avenger, and then Agent Carter and whatnot. Because again, obviously, you couldn't have both of them. So yeah, I thought actually they could have probably, but anyway. So they go back to there to get the Tesseract. We see the younger Hank Pym there, and it's just great. So many great moments. Of course, Tony has a moment with his father. Um, and then we go to the team, which is Thor and Rocket, who go back to Asgard during the Dark World to get the ether from Jane. And that's one thing that has been said so many times over the years that people thought Natalie Portman was done, that she didn't want anything else to do with the MCU whatsoever. And we see Natalie Portman. And at first, when first saw her, it was just a brief little glimpse. I was like, is that actually her? I mean, so she came back for it, and you know, Thor, beer gut Thor gets to see his mother, who of course died that day, and a la Back to the Future, Marty wanting to tell Doc about his fate. Thor tries to tell his mother to save her, and she's like, no, you know, but the comment I was making earlier about the weird thing about timelines and stuff, when they first appear, we see Loki in the prison cell. So, which is he ended up there because of the Avengers. So, I guess it just uh, uh, again, timelines weirdness. He ended up back there again being the god of mischief, who knows. Um but and then we have the team of Hawkeye slash Ronin and Nebula, War Machine, and yeah, and they go back to retrieve the Power Stone. So of course they go back to Guardians of the Galaxy, and you see, the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy when Star Lord is at the temple, and he's when he's dancing to Come and Get Your Love. Of course that whole scene is playing from a different angle, and then you see him just singing to himself, which is so funny. Knock him out to get the Power Stone, and through this, kind of at first it kind of irked me, but like a simple plot mechanic, but it ended up being working for me. Okay, that Nebula, as there are two Nebulas now in the area, her cybernetics interface with each other. So Thanos of the past, 5 years ago, Thanos, or yeah, 5 plus years ago, Thanos, um, and his Nebula and his alive Gamora of that time figure this out, and of course we see Ebony Maw, we see the Black Order, so it was good to see them again. And they realize, obviously, Thanos has succeeded, and I'm getting messages, messages, messages. I'll have to get back to that in a second. But we see, you know, Thanos of the past realize what's gone on and everything that he won, and so he seizes upon this chance to find a way to collect the stones, to see exactly what's happened, and yeah, yada yada. Of course, sorry. Uh, War Machine heads back after they get the Power Stone. Clint and Natasha are go to Vormir to get the Soul Stone. Of course, we see the Red Skull again, and the thing which we all know, but they don't realize or they didn't really think about is, as the Red Skull reminds them, a soul for a soul. There must be a sacrifice. And then, we see Natasha and Clint is like, okay, which one is going to give themselves up at this point? And Black Widow sacrifices herself. So that brings to mind the question of the announced Black Widow movie. I guess it's pretty much set that it's going to be a prequel. No way it can be a sequel unless they bring her back from the dead, which I don't think they're going to do in that respect. So we lose Natasha in that sense. And Clint returns, uh, and again through all these shenanigans and everything, they come back together. They assemble the gauntlet. They reverse the snap. Or, well, Hulk, being as he's the strongest one of them, the strongest there is, as it nearly killed Thanos, he reverses the snap. Everyone is back. But of course, during the whole thing, because of the past issue with Nebula, she switched places with herself, and evil Nebula, we'll put it like this, pre-redemption Nebula, comes back to the present, brings Thanos back, and chaos, of course, chaos results from it. We see a start to an amazing, a great battle where, of course, Captain America, well, Thor, who now has Mjolnir, which he got in the past, which means again he lost Mjolnir at that point. So how does that affect the timeline? Time travel, weird stuff. Um, and Stormbreaker, they take on them, Captain America, Iron Man, all take on Thanos. That shot we see in the trailer of the three of them walking to him sitting in the rubble, and it's a nice little interesting fight. And then of course, looks like Thanos still is, I mean, the baddest there is. He's been, again, the big bad of the Marvel universe. He Thor with two freaking weapons, Captain America, Iron Man, and he takes them all out, you know, trying to, of course, trying to, get the gauntlet, which, has his minions trying to get from various people. And then, as it looks like Captain America's defeated, what do we get? We hear Cap on your left, of course, which is the Winter Soldier callback, and you know one of Doctor Strange's portals open. We see Black Panther, Okoye, and Shuri come out of it. Then we see just everyone, everyone we lost. I mean, because of the snap and come through. We see the armies of Wakanda come through, of course, along with Black Panther, Shuri, and Okoye. We see uh, so many sorcerers come through. Of course, Spider-Man, we see him come back. We see, I mean, this, just thinking about it again, I can't wait to see the scene again. It's just so freaking amazing. for those like me who are comic fans, when we saw Civil War and the battle in Civil War, that's as it's referred to a splash play page. The fold out comics. I mean, I'm wishing I had one of them right with me now. I had thought to do it, but again, the fold outs covers with just the grand designs, be it from a battle or just assemblage of all these characters. That's what we literally got in this movie. I mean, seriously, what we had in Civil War in that awesome battle splash page, nothing compared to the wonder and joy we see here. Of course, again, all those that have dusted are back. Falcon, Winter Soldier, Scarlet Witch. Um, again, who's one of the main game players in this. Uh, we see them all come in, and it's freaking amazing and glorious. We see Pepper in her armor come through, which Gwyneth Paltrow, whether she was originally supposed to do it or not, you know, during filming, released a photo of herself in armor. Well, first she released a picture in like mocap and said something about that, and then we see a picture like a leak. I don't know again whether it was from her or leaked, but in armor. So we were like, wait, are we getting rescue? Which is in the comics, Tony makes her armor, and her name is Rescue, which that's not said, but it is said that it was a present that he gave her armor. So well, we'll call it Rescue. So we see her. We just see basically the hunt, the game for the gauntlet, basically like a grand game of keep away, trying to keep the gauntlet away from Thanos. And, of course, he's got the Black Order and all his armies and forces of darkness. We'll say that. It's just so wonderful, so magnificent. The way that it's done, all uh, I mean, of course, having Evangeline Lilly as the Wasp, her and Scott. Everyone has their little moments. The Guardians. It's just I just wish again in the greatness of this is it would have been cool if like yes I know Hank and Janet Van Dyne, the original Ant-Man and Wasp. Of course they're older. They were just all brought back to life recently, so it's not like they have suits and this and that. But it would have been cool if they could have added to it somehow as well. But still, it's just such a freaking amazing scene. I'm just so excited even talking about it, and I guess it's kind of emotional too, just to see it brought to life so much. Um, and eventually, again, where it looks like there, Thanos might get the gauntlet and whatnot. Then we see Captain Marvel come in and wrecking shop. And in the midst of all this, I almost forgot. In the midst of all this, yet another comic moment, harkening back to Age of Ultron, which again I watched the other day in prep. The party scene when everyone's like, when Hawkeye's like, it has to be a trick as far as Thor's hammer, and of course no one can budget. Then we see Captain America budget just a little bit for a second, and Thor has to look like, huh, what? And then he's like, okay, no. We see that come to fruition, and it's happened in the comics that Captain America is one of the few people worthy enough to wield Thor's hammer, and it is just freaking awesome. And then we see them fighting together. It's oh god, I cannot put into words just how amazing it is. Again, like I said, all the characters we see Valkyrie riding on her well, Valkyrie mount on a Pegasus, leading forces of Asgard as well. It is just so amazing, and ultimately through all these things, you know, Tony Thanos gets it, and then he thinks he has it, but then Tony gets it from him, and Tony makes the sacrifice to set all that is back. One line Thanos says a couple times through it is, "I am inevitable." And then, of course, Tony says, which I thought was kind of cheesy when it happened, but the meaning of it, as I think about it more, it's not lost on me. It's like, I'm inevitable. And he's like, yeah, well, I am Iron Man. So it's kind of poetic that, you know, Tony, Iron Man, the start to this. When he said Iron Man, that was the beginning of this now almost 11-year saga run that we've had. And it ends with, for him at least, and I mean, at least the MCU as we've known it ends with the same phrase, I am Iron Man. Um, you know, so he sacrifices himself. We have a not funeral scene, but like a wake. And again, during that week, you see it's just so great that you see all these characters again from the past 10 years, 22, well, including this, 21 movies prior that you've come to know and love. And yes, I mean, we may only get to see them for a moment or two. Of course, during the battle, we see a lot of them more briefly, and then at Tony's wake, you know, you see Happy, you see Aunt May, um, again you see Hank Pym, you see Janet, yeah, you see Harley from Iron Man 3, which I knew he was going to be in here, but I was like, how's he going to be in here or whatever, and you see him there at the very end, at Tony's wake, and it took me a second to, of course, because he's older now, but to realize it was him. And I guess it was for people who didn't know it was him that he was going to be in this movie. That they might not have caught that, or like me, took a second. Was like, oh yeah, that's right, he's here, and it's just uh, you know uh, a sad ending, but not like and I'm pretty sure I heard some sobs in there from when he sacrificed himself, and then the funeral, we'll call it that. Um, but it so many emotions, so many great, amazing things, and then we're left in a place where you know we have you know Hawkeye and Scarlet Witch talking about he wishes that he could say to her, to Black Widow, or she knew that we won, and Scarlet Witch is like, I'm sure she knows, they both know, obviously referring to Vision. And you see a bonding moment kind of over there. You see, Thor basically give the throne, the leadership of Asgard, of New Asgard, to Valkyrie, which is awesome. Which brings to mind one more thing I'm going to say in a minute. But you see, God, just like you said, and then he makes a reference to the as Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a comic, you know, um, and goes off with Peter and all them. Which I guess during the chaos, after the chaos and everything, Gamora decided to split and go on her own, find her own path, find her own way, because it's not the Gamora that, of course, Peter knew and loved. It's this one doesn't know him, you know. Um, Trying to remember where's everyone else at again. Um, yeah, well, okay, we'll just go down the list, kind of like here. So the main ones, of course, and you see, of course, Scott, Ant Man with Hope, Wasp, and Cassie. The older Cassie, because this is 5 years later. You see Captain America. It's his job to return the stones. Disappears. Supposed to be back in a minute. Of course, Professor Hulk is like he'll be right back, and he doesn't come back. And then you see Falcon and Bucky. Well, Bucky look over, like over to the side. I don't know if it was to the left or the right. um, I think it was to the right of them. It'd be funny if it was to the left. um, they look over and they see a guy sitting on a bench, and you just know it's Steve. And he's of kind of smaller stature. So of course I was thinking at first, is he like young, scrawny Steve again, like lost his powers? But then I was like, no, he's old man Steve. Which in the comics at one point, he lost his power, or they had the super soldier serum. I forget exactly what it is, and he became an old man again. So we see old man Steve Rogers, and as people were wondering, if he was gone too, because again, contracts were up for the original 5, 6. So it was a question of like who was going to die or be written out, or how are they going to do this. And you know, of course, one of the two main thoughts were going to be Tony and Steve, because Chris Evans, Captain America, has said many times before that he wanted to he loves playing the role and stuff, but he wanted to do more things. And again, it's been 10 years, 11 years, or maybe even 12 when you consider production and all that. Um, so we see him, obviously, he got off track, if you will, in the past and decided to live his life. He got with Peggy. And as we see as one of the last scenes. And, in the comics, when that happened, Sam took over the role. Well, briefly after he was killed in Civil War in the comics, not in the movies, Bucky took up Captain America, and then Steve came back, and then he lost he dropped it again, and then Falcon became Sam Wilson Captain America. um, so we see that, and he hands the shield off to Sam, and he's like, I'll try to make you proud, or type of thing. And Bucky nods in improvement, and it's just such a wonderful ending, and so many things. Again, the losses we had, of course, of Black Widow, Tony, obviously. um, you know, One thing I will say, and this may be a nitpick about that last scene, and this may be just me. We saw in Civil War, Steve has that moment with an older Peggy, before she dies, um, where, as we see, after a certain point, she moved on from him. She had a life, and I believe, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think she had a life, and wait, did she have a life and kids? I might be kind of confusing my Titanic thing here. Now I have to go back and watch some more. But I was thinking she moved on and had a life and family and everything. Because I mean, Sharon's her niece. She referred to her Aunt Peggy. So you know, I don't. And I was thinking then that, if that was the case, and I might be completely wrong now. And now I'm like, I have to go back and look at that scene, or learn if she did have a family or not. Because if she didn't, and I'm thinking wrong, then they got their happy ending, and that's great. But if I'm remembering right, and she did move on and married someone else, which I thought it said she did in that scene, then that means he took that away from her. Yes, they got their happy ending, but that means he changed the timeline. And again, what other effects would that have? Anyways, that was one of my little nitpicks. And again, I might be completely off base. I may be remembering wrong, which would be really sad. But yeah, it was just so awesome. Okay, now the one thing that I was going to say, and when I mentioned Thor giving Valkyrie control of New Asgard, made me think of it. So one thing that I know, when they were I can't remember whether it was during filming it was set to happen, or when Marvel had, after filming, you had a little party, 10 years celebration, and had that cast photo with everybody. Um, it was mentioned how, I can't remember if it was Tessa Thompson, or which of the girls actually first brought it up, but to Kevin Feige, we should have a girls movie, a girls thing, or something, all the strong women. And there is that scene where, when Captain Marvel comes down, destroys Thanos' ship, and she gets the glove from Peter. Um, they're like, she fights Thanos a little bit by herself, and then it's like, well, she can't do it alone with all the other stuff going on. And then we see all the women assemble. We see, she won't do it alone. We see, Okoye, Shuri, Scarlet Witch, it is just like, Valkyrie, of course, and it's just like, oh, this is freaking awesome. Just a moment of the women just showing their power and everything. And I wish we could have seen more of that. I wish we could have seen so much more from all of them. But again, it was a freaking 3-hour movie as it was, and just so awesome. So that being said, I, if I had to rate out of 10, I would have to give having in itself. I want to say 10 out of 10 just to be like, because it's such a good movie. But I have to say it's like 9.95, 9.9, whatever. Because like I said, there are just a couple little nitpicks that I was just like, okay, that's a weird choice, but overall, this movie is just so freaking amazing. I mean, A plus definitely. I know at some point, if the funds allow, I mean, I will be seeing it again soon, and I can't wait to because it is awesome. And I'm gonna go look at some other people's spoiler reviews and thoughts because I know obviously there had to be so much that I missed. And one thing I will say I missed, or maybe I just didn't think about it with all that was going on. I know Stan Lee had his final cameo in this, I believe. So, but I don't remember what it was. And like I said, maybe I saw it, but I was just so in awe of everything that was going on. It you know, missed for me. So, anyways, that is my thoughts, my scatterbrain thoughts as far as Endgame. Such a freaking awesome movie. Definitely worth all that we've had from the past, again, 10 plus, almost 11 years. Um, well, no, Iron Man came out in May, so yeah, 11 years. So almost, like I said, almost 11 years if that's the case. Um, Now, as I do with most of my Marvel things, be it shows or whatever, I'm gonna have a little bit of ranting here as far as my thoughts, speculations, or whatnot. So, if you're still watching this, by the way, thank you for sticking with me. Um, so a couple things. As I mentioned, there are other with Disney, which owns Marvel Studios, the Disney Plus service coming out, and the Black Widow movie that was announced. A couple things. So the Black Widow movie, as I said, I mean, pretty much says it's gonna have to be a prequel. It's gonna have to be a prequel because she's dead. There's no way of getting around that. I mean, again, as we have time travel now, okay, let me backtrack. There are ways of getting around that. But what are they going to do now that they have this technology is the question, if anything. So I rescind that statement now. Because again, Gamora is now the Gamora from 5 years ago is now. See, that's again, time is such a weird freaking thing because again, if the Gamora from the past came back to our present, then like I said, did it just create a branch universe where a lot of these events obviously didn't happen? I mean, Thanos couldn't have gotten the Soul Stone and yada 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 yada. Anyways, so many things that are open with time travel. Again, it hurts the brain, but if they don't use the time travel mechanic anymore, we'll give that as a preference. So that means the Black Widow movie has to be a prequel. But again, Scarlett Johansson is one of those people, those magically imbued people that does not seem to age much. So you could do a prequel set in the last couple years, still starring her, and as Ant-Man and the Wasp, as this movie, as many other movies now show, the de-aging technology, as they call it, is amazing. So with that, Captain Marvel with Nick Fury, and of course, seeing Nick Fury and Maria Hill at the wake for Tony was, of course, a good, awesome thing. Like I said, we saw all these little groups of our characters from the movies. It's awesome. Um, so yeah, so Black Widow, either well, even prequel. So I'm saying, yeah, it's gonna be prequel unless they use time travel, which I don't think they do. So whether that be Scarlett Johansson as she is or using the de aging technology, I don't know, but we're guessing that's going to be a prequel since that's been announced. One of the only movies that has been announced. We know Spider Man Far From Home comes out in a couple months, which is supposed to be said to be the actual end of the phase. Um, and again, the placement of Far From Home, whether it's, well, I guess it is right after Endgame still. So, um, because we have everybody back. So, or most people, because we know Nick Fury is going to be in it as well. Um, so that, we pretty much know we're going to have a Black Panther 2, Doctor Strange 2 at some point, but they haven't been announced, like date wise. And Guardians 3, of course, which, because the whole James Gunn debacle, I don't know if it's whatever the original thought date they had is going to still land, but their date was never announced. So the only things we know for sure: Spider-Man, which comes out in a month and a half, and or 2 months and a half, and we've had confirmations on Guardians 3 and Black Widow being greenlit. So those are those. Where else the MCU goes, who knows? But again, we've got Black Panther back. We got Doctor Strange. More's coming. But anyways, so Disney Plus. For those of you who don't know, as I said, Disney, who owns Marvel, they have their own streaming service coming out this fall, Disney Plus, and they are going to have a few Disney or Marvel series, miniseries, if you will, and similarly for Star Wars, have some Star Wars series. The Mandalorian and ah, frack, I'm forgetting his name. The guy played by Diego Luna in Rogue One, Cassian Andor. But Marvel wise, they've announced WandaVision, which is a Scarlet Witch Vision um, show. So again, is that taking place before Infinity War during their time when it picks up in Infinity War, where the 2 years where they've been doing their whatever, or are we seeing Vision rebuilt, which would make kind of sense if they do explore that avenue. Also, there's a Falcon and Bucky series, so I guess is that going to have now again past pre Infinity War? Um, well, no, it has to be post Endgame because if it's both of them, because Bucky after Civil War put on ice till he went to Wakanda. Till I mean, they woke him up in Wakanda, and that's pretty much Infinity War. So it has to take place after Endgame. And Kevin Feige has said these are going to be ingrained with the movies and stuff, so it makes sense that they're afterwards. And Hawkeye, of course, I'm pretty guessing. It's been described as him handing off the mantle to Kate Bishop, who is another Hawkeye in the comics, like his kind of protege as well. So I guess I've pretty much talked myself that all of these are going to be post Endgame. Um, I wonder if, and I will still bang this drum, that along with this now with Disney Plus and everything, that our other series like Cloak and Dagger and Runaways, which they've said is part of the MCU. I mean, we haven't had any big connections yet, but they've said it. If they will now have a little more connective tissue because of that, because I mean, of Marvel being able to do these shows. So I so truly want to see that. And Agents of Shield, which again I love Agents of Shield, even though in so many ways it's had its loose connections to the MCU, and over the years it's gotten looser and looser. And I would have loved to see if I would have loved to seen some of the Agents of Shield in Endgame, even just a cameo. Like we saw Jarvis in 1970s in Endgame, which I'm pretty sure was the Jarvis from Agent Carter. So that was a nice little nod. And I would have loved to see some more, even though I know the Netflix stuff, they've been canceled and they can't really do anything with them, supposedly for a couple years. It would have been nice if, again, there would have been no place really for them to be introduced since they haven't been introduced before, even in the huge battle scene. But, there's still hope. I have hope for the future. There'll more connectivity. Now, like I said, MCU proper. Um, we'll see Spider-Man: Far From Home in July, and that'll give us our first glimpse of where this universe is. We know there's going to be a Guardians 3, like I said, a Black Widow movie, which is pretty much established going to be a prequel. Um, again, unless they go and pluck her back in time and bring her to the present, which I think Scarlett Johansson. I mean, I don't know. I'm just it's Endgame has left so many questions now. I mean, as far as where we go forward, what the landscape's going to be like. Oh yeah, and I forgot the one other movie that's been announced is the Eternals, more cosmic stuff. So yeah, where how exactly that's going to play into things, and again, now Disney Marvel owns the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. So I wonder how long it's going to be before them. Again, X-Men Dark Phoenix, the last Fox movie, um, still comes out shortly, and I'm not excited to see it. I'm going to see it, but I mean, again, the trailers have not made me excited. Anyways, so that being said, again, are the Fantastic Four? Are we going to get any type of nods to them anytime soon? Are the X-Men after Dark Phoenix? Maybe even New Mutants, because there's still a question of what's going on with New Mutants. If it is getting a theatrical run, which they've said, or not. Will that be kind of a reboot now? They make that into a way to come into the MCU? Who knows? So many questions. But, anyways, that's a whole other conversation. Movie was awesome. If you're like me, if you've seen it already, I'm sure you're going to want to see it another couple times. Um, thanks for bearing with me. Thanks for watching 51 minutes. Anyways, as always, feel free to share, subscribe, hopefully give me a like if you like my videos, my content, and forget, of course, Marvel shirt. Um, you know, feel free to subscribe and hit that notification button so you will know when there is more stuff for me, whether it's this completely rambling, disjointed thought process, my reaction videos I do, gameplay I occasionally do, or whatever. And I'm always open up to suggestions, so feel free to leave a comment. Let me know what you think. And as always, thanks for watching. Peace.